So how's everybody doing? Today's special, I'd like to introduce myself and talk a little bit about the building. My name is Dr. Rod Davis. I am the provost of the Tarpon Springs campus, our beautiful Tarpon Springs campus. And you are sitting in our brand new facility, the Chris Sprowls Workforce Innovation Hub. This facility, I'll talk a little bit through it, has a couple interesting features. To the right, you have a commercial kitchen that's rentable space for the community. You also have a 3D printing makerspace area where we do print a lot of really cool things that you will see all around here today, and some that we're going to mention. And we do have a CNC machine in there that is a $90,000 machine. And we're all doing this to promote and get certifications out there for students who need high-paying jobs. And as a matter of fact, when you talk the talk, you got to walk the walk. My son is one of the students that's taking a soldering class here, and he may just have a job when he graduates. So it's pretty cool stuff. So I'm glad you're all here to our beautiful campus, and I don't want to wait or delay because I'm probably just giddy and as excited as you are. I know that my mother couldn't be here. She loves Dennis Phillips. I'm a big fan myself. I was just talking to him, and I told him that during one of the hurricanes on social media, I posted something on his social media site, and I got all kinds of feedbacks from the folks that were here. They're like, "Oh my God, you were online, you posted." It was great. Anyhow, without further ado, and before we get started, I am going to give Mr. Dennis Phillips a warm welcome, but I am going to do a bigger welcome. I'm going to take a selfie with the audience, with Dennis, and we're going to do a rule number 7 welcome.
All right. 1, 2, 3, welcome. All right. Okay. Brilliant.
All right.
Dr. Demers.
All right. Welcome. My name is Susan Demers. I have the happy job of being the Dean of the College of Policy, Ethics, and Legal Studies, as well as the College of Public Safety Administration. This is my little spiel about the role of ethics in the life of our St. Petersburg College students. There are only 2 classes that every graduate of St. Petersburg College must take in order to take home a degree. ENC 1101 because, yeah, right? And PHI 1600, ethics. That ethics is a signature part of the curriculum, but it's also a vote of confidence in our community and in our students' lives. Our goal for our students is for them to come here, have a great time at SPC, furnish their brain so it's a great place to live for the rest of their lives, equip them with the skills to make critical choices so they go on to have great jobs and wonderful lives. And so the whole goal of all of this is that good life that each of us is seeking. Tonight, this is the Gorey Lecture. This is our memorial to my dear friend, Keith Gorey. Keith is one of my predecessors as the department leader in the Applied Ethics Institute. He was a model teacher. He was a great friend. He was, I think, an excellent example of a wonderful human being. I think that's the line in his obituary. That's what I would love to have anybody say about me. An excellent example of a wonderful human being. So, yes, he got me into trouble on occasion with an elfin sense of humor, but he was completely dedicated, and he was always worried about doing the right thing. We lost him in 2009, and as a result, the Applied Ethics Institute holds this lecture every year in his memory. We're privileged tonight to have his widow, Anna Gorey, who is a great friend of the department and, in essence, our continuing sponsor and mascot. And if you would not mind standing, thank you so much. So this is kind of the thing about St. Petersburg College. You remain our student. You remain part of our community for the rest of your life. Thank you so much for joining us here this evening. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Professor Nick Manus, one of our professors from the Applied Ethics Institute, and he's going to get tonight's program started. So, Nick?
Thank you, Dean. Thank you, Dr. Davis, for having us. Before we get started, I know everybody's probably eager to get started, but to put something like this on, it takes a lot of people, and we have a lot of people to thank. First, the president of the college, who was planning on being here tonight, but ended up having to go to Tallahassee, Dr. Tanja Williams, who supports all of these programs and the faculty in a way that a lot of presidents don't do. So we're lucky to have her. Dr. Matthew Leotroth, Vice President, and Vice President Mark Strickland in the back, who, it's nice to have administrative support and interest in these things. People on the Tarpon campus, Jason Nicholson and Carissa Nicholson, who ended their honeymoon yesterday so they could be here tonight to help. Josie, the, administrative director, assistant for the campus, Shannon Ulrich, Val Lanham, Kayla Rivera, all the student activity staff, and Minerva Visser Bobea. Minerva, she's makes everything happen. And then marketing with Lisa Fisher and Kyle Bell, who's upstairs running the live stream, which is complicated to do, so we're very thankful for that. And then Tim Winman, Sean Parton for letting us use the space, and Amber Estlin and Eric Abercrombie, our assistant associate deans. We appreciate them also. So people, I don't know, more than a few people have asked why we asked Dennis to be the speaker this year. They said, what does weather have to do with ethics? And, well, there's a lot in there, but really the reason we picked him was because of his reputation. One of the things in ethics that goes all the way back to Plato and Aristotle, actually, in ancient Greece, was, when they would try to teach people how human beings should be and what the model of a human would be, they would find people in the culture and look at them and say, while this person obviously is not perfect, what great attributes does he have or does she have? And the one thing that stands out with Dennis is that he's trusted by almost everybody. And it's in a time when, it's record low trust in all kinds of institutions, whether it's government or the media or whatever it happens to be. His remains high. And so I think we can all learn from him what is required to build trust, because you don't just get it. It's something that's built over a long time. And, as the dean said, our goal here at the college is, better jobs for our students, better lives, and better communities. And this is what the ethics department aims to do through teaching the whole student and having a well-rounded education. And so we brought Dennis here to talk about, we'll talk about the weather a little bit, but we really want to talk about his relationship with the community and some of the other things he does. So welcome, Dennis Phillips. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I feel very odd here because usually I have my dad's shoes on, and I've got dress, and I had one pair of socks and it says "World's Greatest Dad" on it. So I didn't even realize that that's what I picked out. I'm usually wearing the white half, the half socks with the dad shoes. But earlier on, I had a chance to talk with some of the students, and some of them are high school students who are here as well, doing dual enrollment. and others are enrolled. And it was refreshing because I was really getting, you kind of get an idea and a feel for something based on the type of questions that you receive. And there were some really interesting, hard-hitting, pointed questions. And I think nowadays, a lot of us are thinking the same thing. I mean, I cannot tell you how many times I've been asked over the last 3 or 4 weeks, are you going to call it the Gulf of Mexico or the Gulf of America? I mean, I'm getting that all the time, and I stick to the Gulf because I've called it for the Gulf for 30 years and I'm not changing it. I've been here for that long. But, we are definitely in trying times in terms of questions about NOAA, about are we going to be getting the same information that we've always come to expect? And not just you, us as well as meteorologists. I mean, we get our information, a lot of our raw data comes in from the folks at NOAA and the Weather Service. So, the question I seem to be getting most of all is, are we going to get that same information this hurricane season that we've had in previous years? And my absolute honest answer is I have no idea, because that's not anything that I can control. I mean, the data is the data, and my gut tells me, and honestly, and we'll get into a lot of the discussions that we're going to have, but this is the first and foremost on my mind right now is, I think how this probably plays out throughout this hurricane season is that we are going to get the information we need. My gut is the folks at the Weather Service are probably going to be working a little harder than they've had to work in the past. So instead of having X number of people to do the job, they might have 4 or 5 less. But I will tell you without any hesitation, I know practically every single meteorologist at the National Weather Service in Ruskin, and they are absolutely amazing meteorologists. And more than that, they're amazing people. They take pride in what they do. They don't just have the job because they want to get the weather right. They have the job. They literally got into this because they want to protect people from severe weather like we had last year. So I have no doubt in my mind that whatever it is going to be required, they will get the information out to us and to you so we can make it through hopefully what will be a very quiet season this year. Let's hope so. So that's kind of the question that I get probably most of all, but I know that has very little to do with ethics at this point, but we're going to kind of cover it all right now.
No, it's great. It's great because I know we saw on the Facebook posts that you made advertising that that was one of the more popular, prominent questions. So maybe can you start with how you ended up in the weather in the first place?
So, true story. I was born in Seattle, and back in the day, a lot of us older folks remember we didn't have NORAD.com to track Santa. We tracked Santa by watching the 11 o'clock news on Christmas Eve because the weather person would show Santa on the radar. And it would be a little red blip on that radar, and that was Rudolph. And I bought it hook, line, and sinker. I was 6. I'm like, this is the greatest job in the world. You get to track Santa and get paid for it. And I literally decided at that point, I went from my first goal, which was I wanted to be a garbage man because those trucks were the coolest things ever, and then got to what was going to be a meteorologist. And I will say that I went from there, we moved to Michigan, and back in the mid-'70s, there was a tornado outbreak. It was called the Super Tornado Outbreak, and to this date, it's still one of the worst tornado outbreaks this country has ever had. And at that point, I was so mesmerized by severe weather that I was like the guys that you see in Twister and Twisters. I was that guy who got to chase tornadoes and chase hurricanes, and I've been that guy for a long time. Now the station doesn't let me because you're kind of old to be doing that, Dennis. Why don't you just stay put? But so we let the younger folks do it, I guess. But that's still something that I have a passion for. But I started doing this back, I graduated from Penn State. 1 out of every 4 meteorologists in the world comes from Penn State. That's the only reason I went there, because of their meteorology department. I graduated in the mid-'80s, and my first job was in Salisbury, Maryland. And it's on the eastern shore of Maryland. It's very near Ocean City, Maryland. It's a really cool place. And I was absolutely positively the worst weather person in the history of television. And it is absolutely the truth. I would do the weather. It's a true story. I was at a giant grocery store, and they have Giants up there. That's the name of the grocery stores. And this nice little lady walked up to me, and I was maybe 24, 23, 24, And she walked up to me and she said, I think it is so amazing that someone with your disability actually has the opportunity to do the weather. And I'm like, what exactly disability are we talking about? Well, see, I would move my right arm, but I would never move my left arm. God's truth, she thought I had a prosthetic arm because I never, ever moved it. And I'm like, no, it works. I just never use it. So I say that in seriousness. I really don't know how they didn't fire me after the first 6 months to a year. I was just that bad. And then I went from there to Gainesville. I didn't go to UF, but I worked in Gainesville. I'm in the late 80s into the early 90s. Had a blast there and went from Gainesville for a brief period of time. I was in Providence, Rhode Island for about 4 months. And it was cold, and I was there in the winter, and it was miserable. And I got a call from Los Angeles 4 months into that time saying, hey, do you want to come out and work out in Los Angeles at KCBS? I'm like, I twist my arm because it was literally just the weather. If I'd lived there in the summer, maybe I would have liked it more, but Rhode Island is terrible when it's cold in the middle of the winter. So I went out to Los Angeles, and I was there for about 3 years, included the Northridge earthquake. And I told this story earlier, and it is a true story. You know, weather geeks, weather nerds as we are fascinated by severe weather, whether it's hurricanes, whether it's tornadoes, whether it's earthquakes. And I always wanted to see what it was like to be in an earthquake. I just did. So 4:21 in the morning, Martin Luther King's birthday, the entire house felt like somebody was taking it and shaking it like this. I mean, it was, and the first 10 seconds was awesome because, okay, this is an earthquake. This is it. And then it kept shaking, and it lasted about 45 seconds. And we were about 12 miles from the epicenter of a 7.1 earthquake. And it was a doozy. And the aftershocks kept hitting. And it was interesting. I never realized a lot of this. There's different kinds of aftershocks. Some of them are rolling like this. Other ones feel like something came up from under you and just hit you from below, just a little pop. And those last for, weeks on end. Well, I immediately got into the car and went to work. It's the middle of the night. I'm driving down the 101 from where I lived, which was Thousand Oaks, to Hollywood, which is where our station was. And you're driving up the 101 and you get to the top of a hill and you see the entire LA basin. And the entire LA basin was dark. There was no power, which was such an eerie thing. So I get to the station, and again, I'm at this point, I guess I'm maybe 27, 28. And back then, Los Angeles had no meteorologists do the weather. None. There were stand-up comics. Literally, there were no meteorologists. I was the first meteorologist there. But they didn't realize that geology has nothing to do with meteorology. So they're coming up to me, well, we've got meteorologist Dennis Phillips. Explain how the tectonic plates. I'm like, dude, I don't know. I took earth science in 8th grade, and I kind of remember something about it. So clearly I didn't last there very long. But no, actually my boss in LA, and it's a long story I won't get into, but my boss in LA took a job here in Tampa back in 1994 to start a news operation. Our station was actually Fox, but we did not have a news operation. It was just a little building over in Tampa with no newsroom. And my boss hired 130 people and started a news organization. And I started as the morning meteorologist. I was the morning guy for, I guess, 6 or 7 years. And then I was promoted to the evening spot. And I have been there now, and this is coming up on my 31st year, which never in a million years did come on. Normally, Tampa is a market, very interesting. People stay here a long time. Look outside. That's why. Roy Leap, who worked at Fox, Roy was a weather legend and was here for decades on end. Paul Delgado is a good buddy of mine over at Fox. Paul's been here 32 years. I've been here 31 years. So people realize this is such a great area. And I said this to one of the students earlier. Why is this such a great area? In my opinion, this is just my opinion, you look at Miami. Miami has its own feel. You look at Orlando. Orlando has its own feel. I liken this area to the Midwest in the sense that it's just a lot of small communities that are really tight. Now, we're a big market. We are the biggest market in Florida. We're bigger than Orlando. We're bigger than Miami. We're bigger than Jacksonville. We're the 11th market in the country. So it's a massive TV market, but I liken it to lots of little bitty small towns. And I've been blessed to live in Palm Harbor and Tarpon now for this entire time. I lived in Palm Harbor briefly. I lived in Tarpon for 15 years, and I've lived in Palm Harbor just down the street from here. We're in the Christmas light neighborhood, if you ever, and I'm sure you've been cursing us with the traffic in December when it comes through there as well. I know one of my neighbors specifically does. But at the end of the day, I'm just blessed to be here. And this opportunity, when it reached out, I couldn't have thought of a better opportunity. So thank you very much for coming out. And I'm truly, really appreciative. And I get this really awesome rule number 7 thing that they made on their 3D printer. I mean, look at this, right there. Isn't that awesome? I mean, so that's going to go in our trophy case. We have a trophy case. My daughter, they won Battle of the Books today in Tarpon Fundamental, and my kids have won different things. But this is going to go right on the top because I think this is really sweet. So thank you again.
So you mentioned the Christmas lights. Did you know that it was a Christmas lights neighborhood when you moved in?
I did. That's how I found the house. We actually were driving through looking at the neighborhood lights, and I saw that house, and it was for sale, and I'm like, ooh, and I'm over the top obsessive with it. I mean, I admit it, and the reason I have a few neighbors who don't like me is because, I mean, this neighborhood has been, if you've lived in this area, this has been the Christmas light neighborhood for 30, 40 years. And it literally started as 2 neighbors competing against each other, like in the movies, to try to make it better. It's awesome. So, but what they haven't had before is somebody who has 1.5 million followers on social media going on talking about it and just inviting the entire people to come out and look at it. And that's where the enemies have begun. So, what are you gonna do? If you live in that neighborhood, if you don't like traffic at Christmas, you shouldn't be there. That's just my take. So
Yeah, it is busy. I think this year they had a police officer.
I hired those police officers. And that's exactly why they do it, because the traffic is really, it is insane.
So, but at the same time, while you make people angry, you also use the opportunity to raise money for the children's hospitals, right?
Yeah, it started as a class project from my son, Jake. He was in 5th grade at Tarpon Fundamental, and they were looking for ways to raise money. And he thought, hey, Dad, let's do like a lemonade stand, let's do a hot chocolate stand out in front of the house when people come by for the Christmas lights. And if you've never been, I mean, it is bumper to bumper traffic. And on the 2nd and 3rd Saturday in December, when we do our fundraiser, I mean, this will give you an idea of the volume. We do $1 hot chocolate, right? $1 popcorn, and that's all it is. And my daughter's softball team, they do car hop service where the cars are literally really stopped. So they run to the car, they get the order, they run back, and for 3 or 4 hours, they just go back and forth, and they are so spent by the end of the night. But that $1 hot chocolate and $1 popcorn in the last 2 years has raised $55,000 in just dollar. So you certainly know why the neighbors aren't happy, because that's doing the math, 40,000 cars. So I do get it. But yes, Children's Miracle Network was one of our charities. Feeding Tampa Bay is one of our charities. We've done the Suncoast Animal League. We've done the Red Cross, done some hurricane stuff. So, and that all kind of boils down to our rule number 7 stuff as well, which is also turned into just something on its own as well.
Yeah, so if you would talk about, I guess, probably everybody knows rule number 7, but if you want to talk about the rules for a second, then maybe talk about the swag.
Yeah, it was really just, a lot of this has just happened very organically. I mean, there was never any plan on my part when I did this, because back in 2012, Hurricane Isaac was coming this way. The RNC was in Tampa. The Republican National Convention was in Tampa. And we had a hurricane coming in. And it was 2 days out, and its name was Isaac. And everybody was freaking out. And then we got to move this to Jacksonville. We can't have it in Tampa. And no, we're okay. I mean, don't freak out. I'm telling you, it's going to be okay. So I jotted down these rules. And one of them was don't freak out unless I'm freaking out, we're fine. And that was really only meant about Hurricane Isaac. It didn't plan on having the life of its own. But if you think about it, and heaven knows after Helene and Milton, I think this is a really valid message. How in the world are you going to make the decisions that you have to make for your family if your head's spinning around and you're freaking out? You're just not going to be able to do it. So I try my best to convey that message. And I've learned over the years, I've made my mistakes, like posting a picture of me on Facebook loading my car up with stuff from inside when I told everybody you didn't need to evacuate, but yet I'm putting everything in my car. And people are, what in the world, my neighbors, but also, you told us we don't need to evacuate. Why are you putting stuff in your car and taking it with you? And those are lessons that I learned. I never, I knew that we wouldn't have, this was back with Irma. I knew we weren't going to have structural damage, but how many of y'all have trees near your house? I mean, that's the big concern for most of us, right? It's the fact that a tree could fall. And that's something I'm going to be at work. And I know, law enforcement and emergency management and whatnot, they're going to be at work. So they worry about their families. So they want to make sure their families are taken care of. So at that point, I learned, okay, check mark, mental check. Don't put a picture like that on social media as you're about to go into work for 36 straight hours.
So you developed rule number 7, and then you started the beer or the swag or?
Yeah, the Crooked Thumb. It's a local brewery in Safety Harbor. Great bunch of guys. And Kip, the owner, after Irma, was just wanting to do something nice. He's like, hey, this guy made us feel safe. I didn't know him. Had not been to the brewery, actually. And just made back then it was a Hurricane Saison, which was kind of a neat idea. Hurricane season, Hurricane Saison. And they made a rule number 7 one, and the can had suspenders on it. And they donated a portion of the money to the hurricane relief efforts. And it has, you can find it at Publix during hurricane season. And every year we do a meet and greet on Memorial Day weekend. And it is so rewarding. It's just like this. I just get a chance to sit down and talk to some folks, and they share stories about, how they've made it through storms. Or the one that is always wonderful, but yet terribly depressing, is when I have some people, like all of the girls in the back of the room, they might be in their teens or 20s, but even sometimes someone around 30 years old, they come up to me and they're like, I've watched you since I was a baby. I'm like, that's great. Thanks for that. So, and it is very flattering, but it's just also a reminder how many years we've been here. But yeah, the Rule 7 merchandise, same thing. We did it literally. One of the moms has her daughter, or had her daughter here, and had one of the Rule number 7 cups that are tumblers that we made. And every night I would get home from work at 1 a.m, and from 1 a.m. to 4 a.m. I would be on my dining room table boxing up these things that my wife was making, and we would put a little picture. My daughter Ryan made these pictures, and we would put a picture in every one of these things. It was a family thing. And that lasted until finally it got too big. I mean, it was still Christmas Eve, and I had stuff everywhere, and I was literally driving things to people's houses on Christmas Eve because I promised that it would get there by Christmas. And we finally realized, all right, we need a little help. So we have somebody doing them for us now, but we still donate all the proceeds to the same charities.
That's great. So how did, you do the weather, that's your career. You could just drive to the station, do the weather, and go home. Why do you get involved in community service and community activities and charities the way that you do?
I just love this area. I mean, I get teary-eyed thinking about it. It's just, this is home. And when you've been blessed, as my family has been, and I don't use that term lightly. I mean, we have been blessed. I mean, we've avoided some of the worst storms. I have 6 kids. They're all healthy. They're all doing wonderful. And, we've always tried to, I don't want it to sound trite, but just to pay it forward, to give back to the community that has been so giving for us. I mean, you guys don't understand how amazing this community. I say every hurricane season, my Ring doorbell goes off at 3 a.m. because somebody's dropping off a 12-pack of Diet Dr. Pepper at our front door. Now, my wife hates it. I am going to admit that. It scares her to death. But I think it's awesome. And I would say literally every hurricane season, there's at least 75 to 100 cases of Diet Dr. Pepper at my door during hurricane season. People show up at the station with Publix bags and subs, pub subs and stuff when we're covering. It is unlike anything I never dreamed I would have the privilege of being a part of that. And I've learned as I've gotten older, I mean, I'm going to be totally honest, when I was younger, I just cared about getting the weather right. That was my job. You know, I took a lot of pride in the accuracy part of it, but that was my job. And whatever happened, happened. And I learned as I got older and as we have kids, you know, and as we have our families, and most of all, as I saw the fear in people's eyes when Charlie was coming, when Irma was coming, and even my coworkers, I mean, they're in the newsroom crying because they're afraid that they're going to lose their houses and that their families are going to be disrupted. And those were the moments where I realized my job is not getting the weather right. Hey Siri, what's the weather tomorrow? I mean, there's your forecast. My kids still do it. It ticks me off. My daughter, Ryan, she's like, Dad, Siri said, I don't want to hear it. So, yeah. So, but anyway, I mean, you can get the weather anywhere. What I've learned and what I feel as though as being part of the community, and I've had the honor of trying to get people through the stress of what comes along with these storms. Because you guys all know last year was about as much stress as any of us can take. I mean, 04, Charlie was the first one for me. And I will tell you flat out, I still think Charlie was the biggest threat for our area of any storm that we've had in the 30 years that I've been here. 6 hours before that storm made landfall, the NHC still had a Cat 4 right on top of us. 6 hours, right? So by then, how many of y'all had evacuated to Orlando? Anybody? Well, there were a lot, trust me, because when the storm turned, it ended up hitting Orlando, and everybody hated me. You told me to go to Orlando, and we got the 130-mile-an-hour winds. Well, but when that storm made that turn, Mayor Iorio, Pam Iorio, was on the set with us at the station, and she was saying we're going to rebuild because this was that storm. I mean, it was going to be 140, 150-mile-an-hour winds. We were going to have a 14-foot surge, and it was the one that all of us had been dreading. And when it made that turn to Punta Gorda, you know, I don't know if y'all feel this way, but you have that split moment where it's a sigh of relief, but then you think, oh man, somebody else is going to get it. And in that case, you know, my in-laws were in Punta Gorda, and I went right over. But it's like a survivor's guilt kind of thing. But we dodged a bullet, big time. Last season, and it's hard to say this because I don't think any of us feel this way, but, and again, I mean this in all sincerity, we kind of dodged a bullet again in the sense, anyone who lost their house or lost their contents with Helene did not dodge a bullet. That storm was 100 miles offshore to give us that much water. It never was anywhere near us. So imagine if that storm had made landfall, we would have had a 6-foot higher surge easily. So instead of a 7.5 to 8 foot surge, we would have had a 14-foot surge. And my guess is this would have been underwater, as is a lot of other places along anywhere west of US 19. But again, to answer your question, after Helene, I drove down Alt 19 and I looked on the west side, and it just broke my heart because you saw people's lives on the front yard and on the curb of where they lived. And I've never seen, I mean, I've covered Andrew. I went down and did relief efforts with Hurricane Andrew. And I chased Hurricane Rita back in Beaumont, Texas, and was right in the middle of it. But when it's your home, it hits different. And with Helene, more than Milton, I mean, a lot of us had some wind damage and some trees down, but Helene was the one, if you live along the coast, that, you know, I'm still getting stories from people that they're nowhere near recovered yet.
Or may never get to move back.
Yeah. So ultimately, the answer to your question is I feel blessed because I've been embraced by this community for whatever reason, and and it's something that I do not take lightly. And, you know, people say, are you ever going to retire? Heck no. I mean, if I'm not on air, it's because they got rid of me. I'm just telling you that right now. Because why would I ever want to leave this? This place is awesome.
So you mentioned before during the Christmas lights story about Facebook. That's social media is obviously new-ish in the weather. What's your involvement with that? And it seems like maybe now you're more known for Facebook than your TV presence.
100%. And this is being streamed now, so my boss can probably see this. So probably doesn't like to hear that. But at the end of the day, and this is I'm not exaggerating. 10 years ago, 99% of the time, people would come up to me and say, I watch you on TV. 99% of the time. Now, 99% of the time, people say, I follow you on Facebook. I went from, again, 500,000 followers pre-Helene to 1.5 million, and I became the most followed local TV personality in the country, not just weather, news, or any local news person. And it was all because of the hurricanes, because people were desperate to get information. And if you weren't trying to get it, your family members in Detroit or New York or wherever in Chicago, and they're all calling you saying, I'm watching the Weather Channel. They're saying you're going to die. Why haven't you evacuated? I mean, we get that from so many people. And so social media has and I'll tell you, I embraced it early on just because I like the interaction. I mean, I enjoy it. Some people don't. And I get that too. And there's a lot of anchors and a lot of reporters in my business who don't enjoy the banter and the interaction. I revel in it, including banning people on my page, which there's a button right here for that if I had to ban anybody here. It's entertaining. I mean, and now but it's also a slippery slope because people want to talk politics. I won't do. I mean, why would I want? Look, the minute you talk politics, you are going to tick off 50% of the people, one way or the other. You just are. So why would I want to alienate 50% of my audience when all I want to do is get the weather? I mean, that's all I really want to do. I want to tell them what the weather's going to be like and if they had a storm coming on. So that's something, and I try to avoid spammers because when I do my live streaming show, you get spammers because they recognize there's a lot of people on there, and I usually ban those. And it's kind of funny because it's a mob mentality from the people they're watching. Ban them, ban them, ban them. It's funny. It really is. So I could just see him at home. Yeah. So, but anyway, so streaming, I have been, and it is also, I think, the future of broadcast because television, I mean, I think look, I believe in my heart of hearts there will always be a need for local news because I believe every single person out here wants to know what's happening in their neighborhood, in their community, in their schools. You know, we all want to know that, right? And now whether you're watching the news to get that, or whether you're following it on social media, or whether you're on TikTok, or whether you're on streaming, or whatever the case may be, those are all valid platforms, and those are all platforms that I've absolutely embraced because, I mean, look, the younger generation, there's been study after study said the majority of the news that they get is from TikTok. And, you know, TikTok got a bad rap early on because it was just a lot of ridiculous videos. One of them on there was great because it was a viral thing going on TikTok. What is a 30% chance of rain? That was a big one. And everybody asked me that. And it's a very, very easy answer. 30% chance of rain means there's 10 people that work at the weather office and 3 of them think it's going to rain. It's just what it is. But I now use TikTok as a way to get, and we learn things too, because who was I talking? I think we were talking about attention span, right? And most experts say that, you know, you want to keep your videos 90 seconds or less because usually anything more than that, you tune out, you zone out. So these are things that I've learned because clearly I'm long-winded. And I have trouble getting things down to 90 seconds, but I think those are all platforms that can be useful. I really do. And, you know, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, X, all of it are all avenues to get our message out. You know, back in the day, it used to be 3 TV stations. They were on at 6 and they were on at 11. And that was it. And that was your news and newspapers. Obviously those days are long gone, and now I'm trying to remain relevant by using all those platforms, and because I enjoy it, it's really not difficult at all.
Well, and I guess it's great for the community and even people all over the country who are interested in our hurricane season or severe weather. They can find your page, and they're lucky because you have a formal education, you have experience, you have the best technology, you have a team. And I think a lot of us have learned from you by watching you talk about why things work in the atmosphere, how they operate. But you don't have to have a license to broadcast on Facebook the news or the weather, and you can, be a hobbyist or, a self-proclaimed weather expert, and people might listen to that person.
And they do.
What's your take on kind of anybody being able to be a weatherman?
It's a slippery slope. I used to be more adamant against it, but it's kind of like, what's the point of standing on top of that hill and just yelling at the top of your lungs to not do it, because it's there and it will not change. I think most people who are weather enthusiasts are doing it because they have a passion for severe weather. They're not doing it. Some do it for clicks, because trust me on this, there is a ton of monetization when it comes to TikTok and Facebook and all of these other things. You wouldn't believe how much I'm because I'm in broadcast, I can't do that, but it is insane. And a lot of people have done really well. I'm going to bring up an example because this is somebody who I know personally, and I think it's an interesting story. Mike's weather page. A lot of you guys probably know Mike's weather page. Mike's a good guy. I was on the phone with him a couple hours ago. Lives in Oldsmar, and he has no formal education in weather at all. He's a marketing grad from USF, right? He is a self-taught weather enthusiast. Formal education is awesome, and the fact that I struggled mightily with physics and math just to get where I got, I sometimes wish I didn't go through the process that I had to. But a lot of people, I know a lot of people in the world who don't have formal education, and they're still brilliant people, and they still know exactly what they're talking about and what they're doing. So, I use Mike as an example. I use Mike as an example of the American dream, because Mike graduated USF marketing, no weather background at all, and he's now doing extremely well, making a great living purely on social media posts, because Meta and TikTok and Instagram pay that well, and he has a passion for what he's doing. And I tell my kids this. What a great example to tell your kids. I don't care how high of an education level you went to, as I'm sitting here in college. Maybe not the best thing to say. But my point is, if you are willing to work hard, and if you have a passion for something, there are no limits to what you can do. And I tell my kids that with Mike. I said, this man has a daughter who plays softball for SBC in St. Pete, actually. And I say, look, he's providing for his family. He's got a great living now, doing something that he loves, and he's found a way to make it happen. So there are those stories like that. But yes, there are people out there who want to put the worst case scenario out there. They're going to put the ugliest storm, the worst storm, the one that has the biggest impact, because they know that it's going to get people to click on it and that's going to get them money. Yes, that is a problem, but I don't think we're ever going to be able to stop that, because they're not doing anything illegal, right? Is it misinformation? Maybe. Really not. They're just providing a model that's probably ridiculous, but it's still a model, and it's still something that, can be discussed. So what I've changed my focus, and early on in the day, I used to complain about it, and now I realize, look, it's gonna show up in your feeds, right? It will show up on your feeds no matter where you are. So my goal is to, instead of just being negative, just be like, all right, look, this is what I think is gonna happen, and I don't worry myself about the other stuff. And I think I've found that people will eventually find their way to you if they trust you. And when it comes to that, we've developed a pretty good sense of trust. But it is a problem because I know there's a lot of people out there that it's the anxiety is, I mean, I know some people personally that have weather anxiety. A lot of folks do. I mean, I'm sure some of you in this room may as well. And that doesn't help you when you're sitting there scrolling through Facebook and all of a sudden you see a Cat 5 right on top of us and the headline is we're all going to die. You know, so, and that stuff happens. So my goal is to try to alleviate the anxiety by just being kind of forthright with everything and being a straight shooter without the drama.
Yeah, and so, you know, people watch you and they make what at the time could be life and death decisions or something very serious for them or their property. Or does that weigh on you in your development of the forecast or your delivery?
Yeah, I literally have nightmares on this. I mean, literally have nightmares because on a positive side, when Charlie was coming, there was a woman, and this was before I made a decision that I'll tell you about in a second, but she was in Polk County and her daughter was in a wheelchair and it was going to be really, really difficult for her to get her out of her mobile home. But she was willing to go to a shelter if I said she should. And I said she should. And a tree fell on her mobile home and completely destroyed it. And she messaged me, told me what happened and said, you literally saved my daughter's life because it hit the bed that she would have been in because it hit in the middle of the night. And as rewarding, obviously, as that is, on the flip side of the coin, imagine somebody says to you, do I need to evacuate? Should I take my family to here? And they go and they get in a car wreck on the way to that place and they die. That is what I have nightmares about. I do. Because that could happen. And that could happen. I mean, it's tough enough driving on 19 as it is. Imagine when a hurricane's coming. I mean, and when we're trying to evacuate and you've got 5 ways out of Pinellas County and 3 of them are closed because they're bridges and the other 2 are there's accidents and you're not going to be able to get out and everybody's freaking out. So it's one of those things that I will say what I do 2 things. I do say what my family is going to do. And that's something that a lot of people look for. I've had some people come up to me here and say, when you said that you were sending your family to Jacksonville, that's when we decided to leave. And I will do that because I think that's fair. But if someone says I live in Land O'Lakes, or more than that, I live in Dunedin, or I live in Crystal Beach, or I live in Ozona, and we're expecting a surge of 6 or 7 feet, should I evacuate? All I can say is, you're going to get 6 feet of water. You're going to get 7 feet of water. There will be trees down. That's all I can say. I mean, the choice of whether they actually leave, I could not handle that because I would ruin me. I know it would, and it probably would happen at some point because there's a lot of people who message me during a storm. I cannot tell you the tens of thousands of messages I get, and a lot of them are, should I evacuate? And that's impossible for me to answer that way for that very reason.
And so, you have, like we talked about, maybe sensational people on social media getting people worried. You have other stations and other meteorologists giving their opinions. You have the National Weather Service giving its official forecast. How do you decide in your thought process and your decision making that I'm going to make this call? What goes into that?
Yeah, and that happened with Charlie because when I said that this storm was going to miss us and hit Punta Gorda, the Hurricane Center still had a Cat 4 right on top of us. And I did an interview with the Hurricane Center an hour later, a live phone interview at the time, and the NHC guy was still saying it was going to hit Tampa. And I'm arguing with this guy on the air, on TV. And at that point, I was still kind of the new guy. Again, post Charlie's when people kind of started to watch me. So I was just some younger guy who was arguing with the expert from the Hurricane Center, and who do you think you are? And I heard that from a lot of people, and I get it. But my take is, look, the Hurricane Center has the best tropical meteorologists in the world. They absolutely do. but they're still human. And they also have to put their forecast over a large area, a massive area. I know our area. I know Pinellas County. I know Hillsborough County. I'm very confident in saying that I think I'm more capable of giving an accurate forecast for the Innisbrook area or Point Alexis or whatever areas around here, because I've lived here 30 years and I'm still using the information from the Hurricane Center, but I'm localizing it. So I'm not shy about saying, well, yeah, perfect example. When we get hurricane warnings, it happened with several storms. We will get a hurricane warning and we are in a warning in our area. And that storm might be 80 miles offshore, right? Hurricane force winds extend 40 miles out from the center of this particular storm. I'm very clear. We're not going to get hurricane sustained winds here. Do the math, guys. If a storm is 80 miles offshore and the hurricane winds extend 40, we're not going to get it. I mean, it's not rocket science. It's pretty easy to figure that one out, yet we're still under a hurricane warning. And the reason is, and you have this, I understand why the Hurricane Center has to do this, even when they gave surge forecasts. You remember with the surge with Helene, we were seeing a lot of 12-foot surge forecasts. Remember that? We didn't get anywhere near a 12-foot. We got 7 or 8 feet. But the reason is, the Hurricane Center, when they give their forecast, by definition, it is the most reasonable worst-case scenario. That is, by definition, the number you're seeing. So when you see a storm surge forecast for our area, and it says 10 to 12 feet, and it's from the Hurricane Center, the reality of it is, how many times do we get the worst-case scenario? Sometimes, but usually not. And it's my job at that point to be, well, all right, hurricane force winds extend to X number of miles out. We're not going to see that. This is what we're going to see. But I'll be honest with you guys. With Helene, 5 days out, when that first surge number started coming in that were about 7 feet, 6 feet, and I knew that storm wasn't going to be any closer than 100 miles offshore, I'm like, there's no way this is right. There's no way we're going to get a 7-foot surge if a storm is 100 miles offshore. I changed my mind a couple of days later. By day 3, 3 days out, I'm like, dang, this is actually going to happen. And I say that again, and this is as far as I'll go in terms of people asking, all right, so what's this hurricane season going to be like? We're going to probably have 16 to 20 named storms. It'll be less than we had last year, all right? Where are they going to form? We're going to have fewer Caribbean storms. We'll have fewer Gulf of Mexico storms. We're probably going to have more storms out in the tropical and central Atlantic. That's my opinion. My guess is NOAA and Colorado State, when they come out with their forecasts, they're going to say the same thing. Here's where I think things have changed. People are saying, are storms getting stronger? Well, if the water is warmer, the storms are going to get stronger, period. You can blame anything you want to on why that water's warmer. If you want to say it's climate change, you can say it's climate change. If you want to say it's something else, I have enough trouble getting the weather right 7 days out. I don't try 50 years out. So when it comes to what's going to happen with long-range stuff, that's not my expertise. But I will tell you, and there's no doubt about this, it's simple physics. If the water's warmer, our storms will be stronger. It doesn't mean we're going to get more storms. It does not mean we're going to get more storms. But it means that the storms that form, especially in an area with warmer water, will be stronger. And lastly, most of y'all know this. If you've lived in this area for the last 10 or 15 years, we are getting more water than we used to get with our storms. We are. Why that's happening, at this point, it's not even an argument or a debate I even care to talk about. I live it. You guys live it. Eta, Tropical Storm Eta, 4 or 5 years ago, was a minimal tropical storm, and we were getting a 5 or 6 foot surge, and no one knew it was coming. I didn't predict it. No one predicted that. I was getting messages of people with water in their homes, and I didn't believe them, because this is just a minimal tropical storm. So the reality of our area is my in-laws live in Siesta Key, all right? And they had never, in 30 years, ever had water up to even their garage, never even up to their garage. They texted me while I was in the middle of Helene coverage, and they were on the second floor of their home because their entire first floor was underwater. That was a storm 100 miles offshore. So you just can't, look, again, if people want to debate why it's happening, go for it. I don't care why it's happening. I just know that it is. So my in-laws, who just rebuilt their entire house, they sold it. And they are moved to a condo on the 3rd floor away from the water, because in their mind, this is becoming more the norm. And in my opinion, just my opinion, I also think it is becoming more the norm. I think water is a bigger issue for this area than it has ever been. I'm not saying more storms, because I don't think we'll see more storms than we've had. We go through cycles. That's a year-to-year thing. The number of storms that we get is absolutely a year-to-year thing. It varies Saharan dust. It varies on so many other variables that come into play, El Nino, La Nina, etc. But the intensity of these storms, as long as the water is warming, will get stronger. And for whatever reason, we are absolutely seeing more. Even in our thunderstorms, areas are flooding more now. I drive on Hillsborough Avenue through town and country, and areas in South Tampa. Now, yes, some of this and a lot of this might be infrastructure. It might be the fact that we're full in Florida. We just don't have any room anymore, and there's so many people that maybe that has come into play as to why we are seeing water not drain the way that it's supposed to. I absolutely think that could be the case, but for whatever reason, we are getting more water, and I do think the storms that flooding, bottom line, everybody should get flood insurance. I mean, I say that, and you know, there was the apartment complex down by Drew in 19 after Helene. They were in a Zone X. Zone X. Never will flood. And there was water to the 2nd floor of those apartment buildings. Something's going on, right? Something's going on. So that's my take on that.
Good. That was a good hour. I went fast. We were going to open it up for questions from the audience. If anybody had anything that we didn't cover or anything they want to focus on with Dennis. Did you want to take this, Tim? Okay.
So yeah, anything else. It doesn't have to be, it can be weather, it can be, I can tell you how we do our Christmas lights, teach you a little bit, we can do a little how-to thing. That was an hour? Holy cow.
Dennis, do you ever sleep? Because my wife, you're always on Facebook, you're on TV, you're amazing.
Yeah, during hurricane season, there's not a lot of sleep, but I catch up in times like this when it's quiet out there. So when I did the morning, news back when I first started, I was getting maybe 3 hours of sleep a night because I'm a big sports guy. So I would watch sports and I would always feel like I was missing something if I just woke up to get the scores. So I would be slurring my words on air, and it was really bad. And people were thinking things. I'm not much of a drinker, but they didn't believe me. But Spencer Christian was the weather guy for Good Morning America, and he came to visit us when we were the new kids on the block. And I asked him, I said, do you ever get used to this shift and the lack of sleep? And he said, you never get used to it, but you learn to tolerate it. And that's kind of the way it is during hurricane season. But I mean, my kids know. I wouldn't be, even if I wasn't doing what I was doing, I'd still be up tracking this stuff because that's what my passion is. It's what my love is.
And one comment I have, during Hurricane Irma, you were the only one that predicted the wobbles that went to Orlando. We were over our son's house, and it was coming for us, and we watched you strictly, and you were the only one to call the wobble.
Yeah, wobbles are tricky. I mean, I will tell you, I did not predict the wobble with Milton. So Milton was coming straight up, and boy, we didn't know where it was going to go. And if it had hit Newport Richey, then the bay would have flooded, right? But because it hit south, all the water pushed out. That storm was going due north, right? And we're looking at it, and the roof had already been ripped off, and we're looking at it come straight up. And I went on the air, and I literally said, well, boy, the only way this isn't going to hit us directly if this literally makes a hard right turn right now. And those Indian burial grounds in Safety Harbor obviously did the trick, because that thing did a right turn right there and went right into Siesta Key. And so those and I said this to someone a little while ago, there's no skill, honestly, in predicting wobbles. A lot of it's luck. It's more nowcasting. The models are never going to be able to predict something that's that precise. But I did have a meteorology professor at Penn State, and the man knew as much, Dr. Carl Chelius, and he knew as much about the science of meteorology as anybody. But he always told me, he said, Dennis, I can't forecast my way out of a paper bag. I'm not a forecaster. I'm a researcher. There's some kind of a skill or an art to forecasting tropical weather and whatnot. And I don't know if I have that, but I think with a lot of years of experience, you kind of develop that. And I was talking to that same little girl who was here who wants to be a meteorologist. And I said, think of the movie Twisters. You know, if you've seen the movie Twisters, the woman meteorologist, she had a knack. You know, all the guys were going right. And she was like, no, we got to go left. And she was right because she had a feel for it. And I think experience kind of helps on that as well. But the sleep thing, yeah, that just goes with the job.
Thank you. We
Thank
appreciate
you. I
it.
appreciate you coming
You're
out.
very honest, and that's why we like you, because the Weather Channel sensationalizes everything.
Yeah, when Irma was coming, I never watched the Weather Channel very often, and I don't, because for a reason. If I hear them say something, I always wonder, am I going to maybe lean that way? Do they put a bug in my ear that makes me look at something different than I otherwise? But so I had them on for 15 seconds, and there was a promo that was running, and it was like, boom, 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 it's coming, you know, and I was having heart palpitations. So I can't watch this anymore. So I mean, literally, I stopped watching at that point. They have great meteorologists there, but the minute that they started promoting a COVID cane, I said, I'm done. And they did. And I called out their promotions department on my social media page because it was a COVID cane. And I just said how ridiculous and irresponsible it was. And I got a call from their promo guy's wife. And she's like, why are you dissing my man? I go, that wasn't my intent, but come on, a COVID cane? Seriously? And the next storm, they actually stopped doing it. So I think they got a lot of negative press for that one.
Hi,
Joanne, how you doing? This is my nurse from my doctor from like 20, 30 years ago. So she comes over at Christmas every single year to see the Christmas lights. So,
Well, I'd like to know why so many hurricanes form off the coast of Africa they get over here.
so great question. Why do, you know, well, I can certainly talk loud. That's not a problem. We're good again. Okay. Yeah, we're good. Hurricanes are nothing more than a cluster of thunderstorms. That's all they are. And as they go into a part of the tropical Atlantic off of Africa, and what happens is you get about 80 to 100 cluster of thunderstorms coming off of Africa. They have a rainy season just like we do, right? We have a rainy season in the summertime. We see those thunderstorms. You know they're coming. They have the same thing. And those thunderstorms come off of Africa, and if the conditions are right, they start to rotate. And once they rotate, the water's warm, the conditions are right, they turn into a tropical system. But they're nothing more than just an area of thunderstorms like we get that going into a part of the ocean that's extremely warm, that there's turn from the Coriolis effect, and they start to turn into rotating thunderstorms. And if the conditions are right, they become hurricanes. But yeah, that's all it is. Yeah, they do. Now, usually storms that come off of Africa are a bigger threat to the East Coast. And I was thinking about that today. You know, the East Coast has not had a lot of storms in the last 10 or 15 years, at least the East Coast of Florida. You know, they're curving up to the Carolinas. Superstorm Sandy, you know, hit Jersey and New York. So I find that fascinating. But usually for us, flat out, our biggest threat is a storm that's going to form in the Western Caribbean. It just is. Western Gulf happens. Obviously, Milton was one of those. Actually, Milton started in the Pacific, crossed over Central America, redeveloped, and went to town with all that warm water and became a Cat 5 and a strong Cat 5, 185, 190 before it started to weaken, before it got closer to us. But yeah, the ones out in the tropical Atlantic, the majority of the time, they brush the east coast of Florida or the Bahamas, and they go up toward the Outer Banks of the Carolinas. For us, by far, it's a Caribbean storm that is a bigger threat. And people, and if you think about it, we have been, rather lucky outside of last year for direct impacts in our area because most of the storms go to the Panhandle, and with good reason, because storms that are coming in from the south are drawn toward the poles. Same as in the southern hemisphere, they're drawn toward the south. So a storm that's, east of Cozumel in the Western Caribbean, it's going to want to go due north, and it will go due north, which takes it into the Panhandle unless something kicks it right. Now, that something is usually a front. How many fronts do we get in July and August? Not very many, right? So the majority of these storms are going to go right into the Panhandle. But every now and again, you'll get one where a trough comes down, kicks it into the west coast of Florida. It's been more Fort Myers, Naples than it has been for us over the last 10, 15 years. Punta Gorda with Charlie, Irma, Fort Myers, Naples also with Ian. But obviously last year was our time. Hopefully it's the last time. It is an interesting thought, though. I said this afternoon to the students. The big thing was always, it's been 103 years since a major hurricane has directly impacted the Bay Area. Were we directly impacted by a major hurricane? Did a major hurricane hit the Bay Area last year? Helene did not hit us. Helene hit the Big Bend. Helene was 100 miles offshore. We had surge, but we didn't have a direct impact. Milton was hit Siesta Key. Is Siesta Key the Bay Area? I don't know. It's close. It's Sarasota, but is Sarasota the Bay Area? So, I wonder, no one wants to think about it again, but, it hard to say, but it could have been a lot worse. And Helene absolutely could have been a lot worse. If it was 100 miles offshore, it would have been, if Helene had hit us directly, that worst case scenario that you hear about, that Pinellas County is cut off from Hillsborough County, that would have happened. I'm telling you, it would have happened. So with Ivan, I-10, the bridge with Ivan got destroyed and they were stuck for months. And that's EOC in Pinellas County's worst case scenario, that we get so much water that it cuts us off from the mainland. And Helene could have been that storm. It really could have been, but it wasn't. So.
Yeah.
Hi, Dennis. Thank you so much for doing this. I think this is so appropriate that this is related to ethics because I'm one of the people who was on the west side of 19 in Dunedin and got flooded. And not to add pressure or stress to you, but you are the reason I evacuated. I almost didn't, but finally around 7:30 that night in the rain, I decided to finally listen to you, and I evacuated. My house was flooded. So first and foremost, thank you. Thank you for being straightforward and no drama, because it is so stressful, and that you don't sensationalize it. You are truly the definition of an ethical meteorologist, and I personally appreciate it. So I wanted to say thank you. I wanted to reach out for some time and say that. So thank you for that. My house is about 75% recovered. I wasn't as bad as some other folks. So, all things being equal, it could have been worse. But first and foremost, thank you. I've learned so much from you, and I'm wondering if you could teach us or educate us a little bit further about the cone of uncertainty. I've never had a really good understanding about that.
So it's changed this year. They have been changing it for years on end. But I would say 90% of the people in this room don't really know what the cone of uncertainty represents, because it's not what you probably think. The cone of uncertainty has nothing to do with the dynamics or the forecast of the storm that we're talking about at that point. In other words, Storm Alpha. Well, let's do Storm Karen, because there's a Karen this year. Yeah. So let's do Storm Karen. So Karen's a Cat 2 hurricane, let's say, and coming in from the Gulf. And as you look at the cone, right, it expands outward day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5. You would think that cone has something to do with the actual forecast of Karen. Like maybe the models are saying it's going to make a right turn, or maybe it's going to go straight. You would think that cone has everything to do with the forecast. That cone has nothing to do with the forecast. All that cone is is the average margin of error over the last 10 years from the Hurricane Center on their storms. So in other words, they take their margin of error, which was, by the way, really good with Helene. They forecasted Helene 10 days out, and they were within 10 miles of landfall. It doesn't get any better than that. But so they take all their forecasts from the last 10 years at a 12-hour, 24-hour, 48, 72, 96, 120-hour increment, and they, after the fact, they do the math. What was our error at 24 hours? What was our error at 48 hours? All the way up to 120. And they take that 10-year cycle, and that is what that's what that cone is. So you look at the cone and you're like, I'm outside the cone. I must be good with this storm. Nothing to do with the forecast of that storm. It is nothing more than the average margin of error in miles over the last 10 years from when the Hurricane Center put their forecast out. So and that's surprises a lot of people because, all of us see the models and you might, a lot of times, okay, it's going to curve this way. So you think that the cone is going to trend that way. Nothing to do with that. That is your cone. Now, what they've done is the Hurricane Center has added warnings and watches to inland areas now. It used to just be along the coast. Now they are forecasting as much on inland areas and the impacts because Polk County and Hillsborough County, you might not be on the water, but you're going to still get a huge impact, especially with wind. Maybe not surge, but definitely with wind and with water and rain. I mean, think about, was it Debbie? What was the storm last year that flooded Manatee County? I think it was Debbie. They had 2 feet of rain, and these were areas that were not flooded from surge. They were flooded with rain, and just horrible situation. We did stories on this. Mortgage companies had contacted the people who had loans on these homes and these properties and said, you're no longer required to get flood insurance because you don't need it because you're not in a flood zone anymore. And a month later, they all lost their houses and they had no insurance. There was no recourse. So, and that has nothing to do with surge. That was 2 feet of rain that sat over there. So when I say to people, everybody in Florida should have flood insurance, everybody in Florida should have flood insurance. And even if, and I know, we all know how expensive stuff is. Flood insurance is actually pretty reasonable if you're not on the Gulf. If you're not on the bay, it's actually pretty reasonable. It's not reasonable for you. I mean, obviously, but inland areas, I remember Hardy County had 2 feet of rain and flooded terribly with one of our hurricanes as well. Nothing to do with surge. So, but the answer to your question is, and it surprises a lot of people, that cone is nothing more than the average margin of error from the Hurricane Center over the last 10 years in what their forecast has been. And it's, you can make the argument that's probably going to be pretty accurate if this is what their average error is. Okay, well, then that's probably going to be pretty close to where it is. But if you look to the right of it or the left of it, it had nothing to do with that individual storm. Oh, go.
Times about Hurricane Category 5's intensity, how it keeps increasing. Do you foresee any time of adding a Category 6?
There's been talk about it. There has been. I don't know. To me personally, that if there's a Cat 5 at the 155, 156 mile an hour winds, or a Cat 5 at 180 like Milton had, no matter if we're calling it a 5 or a 6, we're going to be focused on this thing's got 185 mile an hour winds. So people are going to hear the message. The expression hide from the wind, run from the water is 100% my mantra. Because when I tell people who live on the coast that they have to evacuate, you don't have to evacuate 100 miles away. Sometimes you only have to evacuate 10 miles away. Because when it comes to wind, you're probably going to hunker down and ride it out. And every storm that we've had in the last 100 years, you could have done that. The 1921 hurricane in Tarpon Springs, the last major hurricane to hit us directly, had 110, 115 mile an hour winds. We had 90 mile an hour winds with Milton, and most of us were okay. We had power outages, we had trees down, we had some fences down, but not a lot of us had a ton of structural damage from Milton. It was from the water with Helene. So if you live on the water and you're considering evacuating, you do not need to evacuate hundreds of miles. If you can get at a friend's house 15 miles inland, you're going to end up being okay. You really are. It's because the water is what causes, I mean, yeah, you might have damage, you might have some power outages, you probably will, but you're going to survive it. But the water, you know, you can't sometimes. And how many people, you know, with Helene, 15 or 20 people drowned in Pinellas County who didn't evacuate. And in Fort Myers, that number was a lot higher, you know, with Ian. And that was a tough one because everybody thought Ian was coming here. And then in the last 24 hours, it changed and ended up going to Fort Myers. And it was just like Charlie, they weren't expecting it. They thought they were out of the cone, and they were right on the fringe of it. So they're like, we're probably okay. And once they realized they weren't, it's too late. It's the water is the big thing. Absolutely, it's the water.
Hi. So I did want to say I was one of the people that were 5-year-olds watching you as a kid.
Yeah. First thing I thought was you stood up. Yeah.
My mom loves you. You were always on in the house. And my question is for you is what is some advice you could give to somebody that is wanting to go into meteorology, which is also because of you. So I appreciate you for that. So thank you so much.
Oh, that's great. So I took some heat. I had an event at the Straz a couple of years ago. There's a really nice kid, a high school kid. He came up and he said, I wanted to be a meteorologist. And I was actually honest with him about the future of broadcast television and look, meteorology. Were we talking about you? Do you have a passion for art? Okay, awesome. Okay. Then you know what I'm saying. You have a passion for weather. You just do. And obviously, right now at our point in time, you know, there are some cuts going on in NOAA. There's some cuts from the Weather Service. Do I think that will always be the case? No, I really don't. Because I think the way this probably plays out is that if there are cuts going on, we are still going to have some major weather outbreaks. And at some point, people are going to be like, no, we're not going to tolerate cutting things to do with our personal safety when it comes to the weather. I truly believe that's going to be the case. There's obviously a ton of opportunity in the private industry. A lot of companies have their own meteorologists these days. In terms of broadcast, are you interested more in broadcast? Are you interested in, are you in school now?
Yes, I go to SPC. I'm at the Seminole campus. I am a double major in marine science and atmospheric science. That is my goal. And what I want to do is, yes, I am born and raised in Tampa, so this area is very important to me. However, I've always wanted to look at the animal side of things. So how does this affect the environment of major natural devastations that we're having? Because a lot of people don't talk about that. And which reasonably so, because hurricanes do affect people every single year. However, what are we seeing that we could not prevent a storm? You can't prevent a hurricane. That's just not unlikely. But how can we minimize the effects of what's going on in our environment? So that's why I'm currently double majoring in both. So I guess it's more research of a side than broadcasting, but those are the two things that I am currently doing. And I just recently decided to double major in it because I was like, well, I've always had it. And then like you were talking about it earlier of people that were like, oh, hobbyists. And I was like, oh, well, that was me.
Yeah, and now you have a passion for it. And that's awesome. And if you were to decide to continue your education, FSU is probably where you want to go. Okay. I mean, FSU has the largest meteorological program in Florida, and I'm not an FSU grad. Both of our meteorologists, Greg D and Jason Adams, are both FSU grads. The majority of people I know who are meteorologists in Florida went to FSU. They just have a really, really great program. And not to mention the fact that you're in Florida. Now, Miami does too. Miami, yes. You know, Miami's pricier and, private and whatnot, but both really, really solid programs. But that's awesome. And I like to hear that. I always believe there's always going to be a need for what's happening in the weather and how it impacts the environment and how it impacts people. It's always going to be a thing. And I have no doubt that there will be jobs out there. And if you're looking at research, I think there's probably going to be even more, because that is clearly where we need to see how are we going to fix some of the things that are going on right now. And having young people who have a passion for it is amazing. So congratulations for that. That's great. Love to see that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I just wanted to say I enjoyed your Facebook page as well. And it's for the information, knowing that you're getting the right information is huge. But also just the community. There was a lot of commiseration, a lot of, like, I'm so sorry that happened to you. I'm so sorry. I mean, it was a lot of, it's a nice community feel to know that there's other people out there going through. Because I took off for Helene. I lived in Oldmar Offshore Drive, and by our old park there. So everything was underwater.
Oh.
So but I was racing the hurricane up to North Carolina, of all places.
Oh, wow. Jeez.
Because my mom lives in Boone in the mountains, and then my sister's in Belmont right outside it. So we converged to my sister's house because they came down from mountains because they were underwater
They got
as well.
crushed. Yes.
So my question mainly is, you're saying water is the most, from the rain, is the thing that we're having to worry about the most.
Yep.
Is that something, because with the storms getting stronger and they're getting, are they also like getting bigger with more rain? They're slower, dumping more rain. Do you see a lot of that happening where it's going to go maybe up to the Carolinas more? Are we going to see more
It's a great question.
devastation that way?
Larger, stronger storms take longer for them to weaken. So if you're going to have a stronger storm coming in from the Gulf, or from the Atlantic for that matter, in terms of the Carolinas, if it's a stronger storm, it's going to dump more rain before it has a chance to die out. So yeah, that makes perfect sense. The Gulf is warming. I mean, it is. And, do we know of how long that's going to last? I don't. But right now, the Gulf is warmer than it was in years gone by. Although right now, actually, I take that back. It's cooler. So it changes year to year. It absolutely does. But the overall sentiment in meteorologists with the AMS, with NOAA, I mean, people that I respect, and that is their expertise, even more so than mine, is storms are getting stronger because the water is getting warmer. I mean, now,
It's just dumping more rain.
and if its storm is warmer, if the water is warmer, the storm's stronger, it's going to take longer for it to die out. So yes, I would say that is probably more the norm for anyone in the Southeast from a storm impacted.
To Tennessee.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The Tennessee Valley, it all got hit. Now, Helene was an exceptional storm. I would argue that we are going to see more storms like Helene as long as the water is as warm as it is. And this is obviously, it's a volatile discussion, because there are meteorologists out there who are going to die on that hill in terms of how climate change is going to impact people. And in my opinion, I don't think we have all the answers yet. I just don't think we do. I'm not dismissing those possibilities. I'm saying I don't know. What I do know is the last 5 or 10 years, we are seeing stronger storms because the water is warmer. And if that trend continues, we're going to see more water, including in the Carolinas as well. Absolutely. The entire Southeast, I would say, is going to be under the gun in not more storms, but stronger storms, and the ones that do form coming in from the Gulf. Maybe not so much the Atlantic, but ones from the Gulf and from the Caribbean, because those are exceptionally warm areas right now.
Just one more thing. I'm so sorry. But do you think we're not doing enough research to find out more fast enough?
I think there's a percentage of meteorologists that are working on just that. But this is something that I think we're waiting to see how that cutting in funding is going to have an impact on that. Because I don't, again, this is completely out of my expertise. I don't work for the Weather Service. I don't work for NOAA, but I know a lot of Mets who work for NOAA and the Weather Service, and they're very concerned because they feel as though that will we continue to progress in accuracy? Because the accuracy last year with hurricane season, even though people most of the time think we're wrong all the time, the accuracy was insanely good with the models. The Euro AI model was ridiculously good, and that's a brand new model. And you can argue, well, if we didn't have the ability to continue to advance with that, the quality of the forecast would probably start to suffer over a period of time. And I think that's a concern with a lot of meteorologists in that part of the field. I know it is because I've talked to them about it. Okay.
Hi. So I am also someone who's grown up watching you. My whole family has watched you on TV. That, in the warmest regards, we've coined the nickname Suspender Boy. And where that leads me is, you get to be the kind of like the face of the operation, and obviously you have like a vast education on everything. But what do you do? Like, not like what do you do, but what is it that you're doing behind closed doors, or when you're off camera? What is that part of your job?
So you're talking about work or just personal life?
I mean work.
Okay, because personal life, my daughter, my 10-year-old plays travel softball, and I spend every waking moment with travel softball on the weekends. Although Friday, I'm actually going to Des Moines, Iowa, to speak at a conference. I'm presenting about hurricanes in Des Moines, Iowa. Don't ask me how that happened. I'm like, why don't you have the conference in Vegas or have it in, someplace else? So yeah, I'm going to Des Moines to talk about Milton and Helene. But in terms of what we do, 6 months out of the year, pretty quiet. I mean, y'all know it's going to be sunny and 80 degrees. That's your forecast, right? From June through the end of November, when there is a storm that's coming, it is all hands on deck for everybody in the newsroom. We sleep in the newsroom. We have air mattresses. I sleep in my car. When I do, and usually I take that back. I'll nap for 15, 20 minutes or whatever, because no one has to, and including the reporters that go out and cover the storm. That's always a conversation. And I get it. There's some people say, why are there reporters out in the middle of the storm when you're telling people not to go out in the middle of the storm? I understand that logic. You do not have to twist the arm of any of the reporters to go out and cover those storms, because they also, Mike Paluska is one of our reporters, likened it to reporters who go out and cover war. There are reporters who go out and cover war stories to bring that home to the people, to show them what's going on. And he said it's very much like that when you're out doing live shots for hurricanes. You're letting people see what's happening out there that maybe they're not experiencing themselves, or they want to know what's happening. For weather, for us, we are working 24/7 during that time. All the Mets come in, but for us, because we have such a passion for weather, there's not really a sleep deprivation thing that comes in. I mean, you crash afterwards, but during the storm, you're in it. And we're doing live interaction, and you talked about the camaraderie that goes on. I love that part of it. When we do live streams during a storm, there's tens of thousands of people in these streams, and they're having their own conversations, and they're sharing what's going on, and we kind of see it from time to time. But it really is a community, as you said. It is a community, and it's something that I love. It's really my favorite part of the job these days. It used to just be preparing for getting on air. Now my job, I'm on from 4, 5, 5:30, 6, 7, and then I do DPL from 7:30 until whenever. And during hurricane season, I'll be doing it 5 days a week, because there's a thirst, there's a desire for people to want to know what's going on, and the part that you see on TV is continuous. But when there aren't a lot of storms around, you do streaming, you do social media. It is no longer, it used to be back in the day, the anchors would there's anchors even in this market who would stroll in half hour before they were on the air. They'd read their copy, they'd do the news, they'd take a 4-hour dinner break, they'd come back at 10:30 and they'd do the 11 o'clock news. Those days are long gone. Now the expectation is social media, streaming, everything else, because as I said early on, people are consuming news and weather 24/7, and they're getting it by opening up their phone and clicking on a button. It's all on demand. But this year, for me personally, I've had a lot of speaking engagements, and I love it. I mean, it's been really enjoyable to get a chance to meet everybody, and I thank every one of you all for coming out tonight, and hopefully we answered some of your questions. And there's going to be obviously a lot more as we get through the season. So there's a Hurricane Expo coming up in Tarpon, I believe, the end of May. So I'm going to be at most of those as well. So again, I thank you all for coming out here tonight. I really appreciate it.
How about a round of applause for Dennis?